On the Conrad Murray case, Dr. Murray is present with his counsel, Mr. Chernoff, Mr. Flanagan, Mr. Gorgian. The people are represented by counsel, Ms. Brazil, Mr. Walgren. Dr. White, once again, is on the witness stand. All the jurors and the alternates are present as well. To everybody, good morning. So, ladies and gentlemen, jury, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you for your promptness. And Dr. White, good morning, sir. Do you acknowledge you're still under oath and still sworn to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. This will be resumption of redirect examination by the defense, Mr. Flanagan. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Dr. White, when we left off yesterday, we were talking about some of these models prepared by Ms. Ornelas, Dr. Schaefer. There's a lot of variability in these models, isn't there?
Yes, I think we illustrated that earlier with respect to both pharmacokinetic models and pharmacodynamic modeling.
And we were going through some of the variables that you have studied from a clinical standpoint. These studies have also included variability from a pharmacokinetic standpoint, too. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were asked yesterday about the figure that was used this is a defendant's exhibit, quadruple N, as in Nancy. And there's nothing about this that makes it an exact science, is there?
No, because it's dependent on the individual patient and also the variability in the various parameters that go into the equations. Small changes in the absorption half-life, which I mentioned earlier, and we assumed, for example, 22 minutes. But again, depending on the amount of lorazepam that's given in the stomach, that half-time can vary from 22 minutes up to 40 minutes in the same investigational study.
Well, this model here assumes a 0.0013 milligram of oral lorazepam in the stomach at noon. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that represents 20% of what was actually found by the coroners at autopsy. Is that correct?
Yeah, it represents a lower concentration of free lorazepam in the stomach.
And that 20% representation is meant to allocate 20% of what the stomach contents were to the oral versus the possibility of the other 80% being spillage, referred to by Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah, I think Dr. Schaefer talked about slosh coming back from the distal duodenum into the stomach in a post-mortem situation.
And this diagram also assumes a starting point of 0.05. What does that represent?
Well, that represents the assumption that Mr. Jackson had received lorazepam, which we know he had available. He had multiple bottles of lorazepam. And also the possibility Conrad Murray had given him IV lorazepam the morning prior to his death.
And that possibility is revealed by a statement to the police regarding the night before having been able to produce sleep in Michael Jackson by the use of only lorazepam and midazolam.
Correct.
And we also discussed the other scenario where I'm referring to defendant's exhibit quadruple N, which is quadruple Mary. And up here we have a 0.016 milligrams in the stomach. And we also have a starting time down here where we're starting at 0. Is that correct?
Right. That's an assumption that no lorazepam residual was present in the body. That is, there was no blood level of lorazepam prior to the time Dr. Murray gave the first bolus dose of lorazepam on the 25th. But I would point out that when you look, for example, at the 7 o'clock time at which it was suggested he might have taken some lorazepam pills, if one merely assumes it's, for example, maybe 7:15, 15 minutes later, then what you see is that there would be more residual free lorazepam in the stomach. So you can work these models backwards to essentially get virtually any number you desire. But I'm just suggesting that all you have to do is move that time point a little later. It means there would be a little more residual of the pill, dissolved pill in the stomach, and you would also achieve a slightly higher concentration, theoretical concentration, at 12 noon. It would more closely approach the precise value that was measured, which is 0.169, which is 3% more, approximately 3% more than shown in this illustration. But I would just want to make sure you understand that these are just really estimates, and that by moving or shifting things along the time axis, even very minor shifts, you can alter not only the timing of the peak level, but the blood level that would have been obtained at autopsy, and the amount of residual free drug that would have been found in the stomach at the time of autopsy.
Now, this illustration is not only is the oral illustrated here, but Dr. Schaefer's illustration of the IV. The IV. His illustration is of a theory that would comport with the possibility that 40 milligrams of lorazepam were used in this bolusing, 10 boluses of 4 milligrams, and your theory here is indicative of oral lorazepam being given at 7 o'clock. It's just an explanation of possibilities.
Yes, approximately 7 o'clock.
Approximately how many possibilities would be subject to being diagrammed if you made variations in the parameters?
I wouldn't say infinite, but a huge number.
And when we put up, I'm going to put up LLL. It does not have Dr. Schaefer's simulation on it, but I wanted to ask you, this starting time at 7 o'clock, if that is moved to 8 o'clock, what does it do to the stomach contents?
It would result in about I believe it's a 0.008 milligram of free lorazepam in the stomach, and very close to exactly what was found at autopsy.
And would it also change the blood level?
It would approach almost identical to the value found in the autopsy specimen from the femoral vein. But again, I would point out that these models all are subject to variability because we're assuming population parameters for generating these models.
And if we were to go to KK, quadruple K, with similar to what we've just reviewed without Dr. Schaefer's theories or potential scenario?
Yeah, again, you could still give...
We're going back to the base here of 0.
Correct. So you're assuming there's no measurable lorazepam in the body, which is probably not highly likely. I'd say it's highly unlikely it was 0. But if in fact it was, then you can still administer, self-administer 10 of the pills at just before 8 o'clock and get the measured levels of residual lorazepam in the stomach and achieve the concentration that was obtained in the femoral blood at autopsy. You could also break that dose down into multiple doses. You could do very complex analysis where he took a few pills, say at 4 o'clock, he took a few more pills at 6 o'clock, and finally a few more pills at 8 o'clock. So in other words, they were given at different times. And by modeling it, you can generate the same type of numbers that were observed at autopsy.
And so we can move the baseline back down to 0, increase the pills to 10, we can vary the time, and there's a number of scenarios that will lead to a point 169 or depending on the number of pills and the time they're taken, correct?
Correct.
We don't know exactly how many pills were taken, do we?
I can't No one can be sure.
We don't know exactly how much lorazepam could have been used via IV over a period of time, do we?
No, because we don't know how many oral pills Mr. Jackson normally consumed.
And in actuality, it's hard to tell. You can't tell in the human body when you measure blood samples whether or not it's the lorazepam was orally ingested or whether it was injected IV. Can you?
No, as we said, as I pointed out earlier, lorazepam is one of those compounds that's very effectively absorbed from the GI tract, the stomach and the upper GI tract. So virtually anything that's put into the stomach gets absorbed into the systemic circulation of the body. It's anywhere from 93 to 95% of an administered dose. So it's what we say has high bioavailability when given orally.
Now, moving on to the other subject, you were asked about the point 0.3 figure used from Simon's article when calculating the urine concentration. Recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, in respect, calculations were done by involving Dr. Schaefer's. The top figure is the simulation prepared by Dr. Schaefer, or it's not. This is prepared by Ms. Ornelas, but this is the simulation starting in infusion at 9 o'clock and lasting till 12 o'clock, at which time the blood level. Green is meant to depict the blood level, correct?
Yes, though I'm challenged with colors. It's a dark line.
It's tough to see at this angle. What exhibit, please?
That is exhibit quadruple U.
If you, Dr. White, do you feel more comfortable in having the hard copy brought up?
No, I'm actually familiar with this, Your Honor.
Okay.
It's Dr. Schaefer's simulation.
Now, the determination of the urine content that would correspond with that. The figure of 0.3 was used, and that is from the Simon's article?
Well, Dr. Ornelas looked at a number of articles, and
The objection sustained, the answer stricken.
This diagram here, as stated where it says based on Simon's, this was taken from the Simon's article, was the parameters there, wasn't it?
well, I believe, as the district attorney pointed out yesterday, the Simon article says less than. I'm not sure if it's less than or equal, I don't recall, but it's said less than 0.03%. So it could have been 0.25, it could be.
Stop right there. You said it could be less than 0.3. This reflects 3% in the simulation, correct?
It reflects 0.3%.
If it's less than 3, say it's 2.5.
No, you're dealing with different decimals here. I think it's important to clarify that.
All right. Thank you. I misspoke, Your Honor. It's less than if it was less than 0.3, if it was 0.25, what would that do to this line? Would it just make it come slightly lower?
It would be lower, but
Objection of the honors area of expertise as he testified to yesterday.
I'll overrule the objection. You may answer.
well, it's, you know, if you assume that's a certain percentage lower than 0.3, you would expect to see a lower level measured in the urine over time. It wouldn't certainly be close to the level, however, measured in the urine at autopsy.
The shadow that is illustrated by the dotted line that goes above and it goes below, that shadow is meant to take into consideration a 50% variability. Is that correct?
It's taken into account a certain